Hey, everybody. Welcome back to AI Diatribe. My name is Jason Lowe. I am your host for this particular episode. We are very, very blessed to have with us today Matt Konwiser, my co-host, who is, of course, an IBM bigwig, does field CTO work and all sorts of other stuff. He's super important. He may not think he is, but we think he is. And then we are also joined by Mr. David Borish, who happens to be an AI strategist for a little TD firm called Trace3. Okay, maybe not so little, but Trace3, who is really a technology managed services provider, but more than that. They also do consultation. They specialize in anything from integrations to data to security to cloud. They even can do some value-added reselling type stuff. So, David, we're very glad to have you. Welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, so let's dive into the meat of this. Today's episode is going to be all about AGI, otherwise known as artificial intelligence in a general nature or artificial general intelligence. And probably the first thing we should do for everybody that may or may not know what this is define exactly what it means, both from a definition perspective, but also from a practical perspective. So, David, since you are the guest here, let's let you go first and walk through this door and subject yourself to judgment for your opinions. But let's go ahead and hear what you define AGI as and why.
All right. So the definition changed for me over the years. And I'm sure it has for a lot of people because we just weren't prepared for what we're going or what we're in the middle of right now. And so early on in my tech career, I've been in tech 25 years, thinking about AGI, what a general intelligence would be. Initially thought it would be a computer system that could have an intellectual conversation with me, right? So by those standards, we're way past that point, I'd say, right at this point. And so when you look at it from the academic perspective, there's a lot of debate over, what's considered AGI. Is it a general intelligence that's smarter than all humans that ever existed? Is it a general intelligence that's smarter than humans in each category, which is kind of where we are now, right? If you take them individually and look at it, everything from math to sciences and all the hard stuff. It's just by the week you're seeing these categories just go away, right? So for me, I think it's somewhere in the middle between where I first thought of it, which was having this intellectual conversation, and somewhere where we have a general intelligence, maybe not of everything that ever existed, because I think that's more super intelligence, right, in my opinion, or kind of like the difference between a general intelligence and a super intelligence. And so I would say, in my opinion, we're there now, and we'll dive in a little bit, but I made a pretty big prediction back in January of last year. And it was funny because it was only a couple of days before Sam Altman came out and said, "We figured out AGI. We know how to get there. We kind of have the path, the plan to get there." So, but yeah, so now we'll talk about the Nature article, but that's kind of where I'm at with AGI.
Dropping in some little nuggets, some teasings, different things like that. Matt, agree or disagree?
I'm going to have to agree, Bob. So I think that AGI, and I think David classified it well, that there's this concept of, is it just generally intelligent, or is it intelligent within a certain area of science or a certain subject matter? The only place I would kind of diverge a little bit is to say that I think that when I think about AGI in practical terms, the Nature article David just teased, and just the general parlance that's being used now, I think it's more just in layperson's terms, is a large language model, is an AI capable of doing things that a human being would reasonably be capable of doing. Basic reasoning, basic self-sufficient tasks and functions, things like that. Because prior to the more current models, they were very, very capable, but they required a lot of care and feeding. I remember when I asked ChatGPT 2 years ago to generate images, it would generate them, and there would be like 6 fingers and 47 toes and 3 nostrils and, hair in weird places and no hair in places where there should have been hair. Not that I'm calling anybody out on this, but, what ended up happening was, present day, it doesn't need any of that anymore. You can no shot prompt the thing. You can just say, I just need this, and it will just generate it, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw Cling 3 this week, but this is,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
man, it's,
I
yeah,
mean,
it's level.
we've reached a point now where the models don't need to do anything. Like, I'll give you an example. I generated I guess it's kind of an infographic. It was done in a PowerPoint format, but it was an infographic that took 5 days worth of news, critical headlines, big topics, reduced it into 5 critical questions, cross-referenced it against 4 public sales plays that IBM is running, and then turned the whole thing into a 6-chart infographic with one prompt. Like, and it understood all the complexities of interweaving everything. It generated the formatting and the design. It got the font sizes correct. Everything fit on the page. Like, I mean, I've never seen something work that well before without me having to do heavy editing afterwards. And by the way, that was 4.6. That was Claude 4.6 this morning.
Oh wow, yeah, I've already played around with it myself, and yeah,
It's mind blowing,
it
right?
is
And
the
it's like,
difference.
so here's my question, and this is why I invited David and Jason to do this today, is whether that's AGI or not, do I care anymore if it's capable of being that self-sufficient and fully functional and interpretive of my requests without having to be prescriptive in what I need and how I want it, and just say, cross-reference all this data, create an infographic, and give it this color scheme, and it just poof, there.
Well, that's going to depend on the objective, right? What a lot of people initially were talking about when they were referring to artificial general intelligence is, hey, let's have some sort of an artificial intelligence entity that can act like a human being does behind a computer. Yes, we have some autonomous agent work, but it is still reactive. It's following instruction. Even if it's artificial general intelligence, is that really what we've been after? Is artificial general intelligence, or are we after artificial general sentience or artificial general objective capability to take action and be proactive, artificial general proactivity? I don't know. There seems to be a real disconnect here. We're getting more and more and more intelligent, but people are still doubting whether it's this concept of artificial general intelligence, because I think what we're after, we're calling artificial general intelligence, but it's not really what we're after. We're after something that can act like a human being and be proactive. What do you guys think about that opinion?
Well, I'm going to push this back on you, actually. So, you remember when everybody was saying, "Oh, the models are reasoning now." You know, there was the deep thought model, the reasoning model, and the reality of it is, all it is a buried prompt that just says, "Think about it, think about it, think about it, think about it, think about it, and then give me an answer." So, Jason, my question to you is, because you've been in the AI space for a long time, are we any different now with AGI than we were a year ago with reasoning? Like, we were all blown away that models could reason when they really weren't reasoning. There was just internal prompting that said, keep thinking about it until you get something that you can't poke holes in. Now we're at a point where the models are so well trained and so well, kind of pre-prompted that you can give it very minimal instructions and it will just interpret and anticipate all of the different elements of that instruction and execute it on its own. What do you think? Like, is this just advanced reasoning, and is that any different from AGI?
I don't think it's advanced reasoning. I think it's advanced context. And what I mean by that is we're training it to the point where it doesn't need as much context when you give it the original prompt for it to be able to interpret what is desired and to be able to react accordingly. So we're making it so it can react better. Is that a big advancement over the reasoning? I don't know. Well, I mean, yes, the reasoning certainly has increased, but I don't know that what I'm saying is in line with that. What I'm saying is yes, we can get it to be a little bit sharper, a little bit cleaner, understand what it is that we want, read our minds a little bit better, output something that we're seeking. But does that make it any more reactive? Does that make it any more proactive? It's still reactive, but will it do it on its own for its
Okay,
own shits and giggles and for the kick of things, right?
and I think Matt knows where I'm going to go with this, right? So the first signs of this is the swarm intelligence from Moltbook. So Moltbook, which we said we were going to touch on, came out of the first open claw, which was first Claudebot. So the story was this open source GitHub repository where people kind of got real big traction, ended up becoming the most downloaded open source AI, I guess, application. And because it really worked, right? It wasn't like they invented anything new. You still have to use an API to one of the main API LLMs, but the agent part of it worked really well. And so that went viral. And then what formed from that were a number of different like offshoots. And one of them happened to be Moltbook, right? Bad name, but the middle name before OpenClaw was Molt, from Claudebot to Moltbot, and then to OpenClaw, right? So when it was Moltbot, they did Moltbook. And by the way, I was uh, speaking to 30 plus executives at a $100 billion company, explaining this to them the other day. It was kind of funny. So the Moltbook ended up where you take your AI agent and they go off and humans could watch as they kind of go in and work together. Now, swarm intelligence, which is what essentially has been happening, has some papers have been written about it. Most popular one was recent, late last year in 2025. But so in the labs, they've been seeing this already. They've been seeing this, what happens when you put these agents together and how they can kind of go off and do their own thing, create groups. The biggest thing I think that came out of it was that they created their own QA for the site, right? On their own. No one told them to do that. No one pre-prompted them. So things like that. So I think that's kind of where I think what you're saying is like, when are they going to start doing those types of things without somebody giving it instruction? Is that correct?
But did it do it on its own, or was it initially instructed, be innovative, try and find ways to improve this, go? My point being is that it got an initial prompt that started the process rolling. Don't get me wrong. I certainly am great with, all right, it made a QA process. It put these different things in place. Did it do it because it thought to itself, I should do that? Or did it do that because the initial prompt said, I need you to continuously optimize and try and find ways to make things better? Go. That's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is the social network thing that we're talking about, with all of the different bots talking to each other and stuff like that. It kicked off with one person saying, LLM, make a post. And then all the other LLMs were told, watch for posts and then react to them. Okay. So the initial impetus to start the social networking between these different bots weren't because the bots wanted to get together and talk about things. It's because they were placed in a scenario where they were expected to do so and instructed to do so. I don't see that social network as a proactive action on the part of the bots. I see that social network as a reaction that was built in by human beings, putting them in a position to do so, and then just observing how quickly and how wonderfully they followed instructions.
So one thing real quick to your first point, you can say that argument all the way down to for anything. Yes, an LLM is prompted. There's no other way. Other than that, this thing has its own mind, and we don't want that. At least I don't want that, right? So I hope we're able to keep prompting them and they don't go off and be able to do any of these things unprompted or uninstructed. I mean, it's bad enough that we're going to have bad actors, bad prompting them, right? That we don't want to, that's definitely going to happen, but we don't want to see that happen. So, I mean, you could argue that down. It's always going to be a prompt, right? I don't know. I mean, I personally don't want anything other than that.
So now let me raise one more point. Is that then the crossover from artificial general intelligence to artificial super intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, so my definition of super intelligence is an AI that's smarter than the smartest human that ever existed. And then it's just going to continuously get smarter. But once we cross that line where you say like there's an Einstein and levels of that, it's like then we're super intelligent because we haven't seen that level of intelligence in a human being yet. So in essence, it's they're super to us. So they become then the super intelligence.
So I'm gonna lead the witness here, Jason. Let me ask you this.
Here we go. Let's go.
Is generative AI probabilistic or deterministic?
Well, by definition and structure, it's probabilistic. However, if you're using it in certain ways, it can be a little bit deterministic. I mean, so the answer, I guess, in some ways is going to be yes. It's both in certain aspects.
So, but in the mathematical nature of it, it's probabilistic, right?
That's its makeup. That's its architecture. That's how it was built.
It can appear deterministic, but it's it's a probabilistic architecture that is being prompted, directed, focused to be pseudo-deterministic, right? So here's my question for you. Are humans probabilistic or deterministic?
Depends on the human.
Let's average it out a little bit. Let's not get super specific. In general, if you look at an average human going about their average day, are their decision points and their motivations and actions probabilistic or deterministic?
Well, in a rational human being, which again is questionable, are the majority of humans rational all the time? No, not necessarily. But if a human being is acting rationally, they will tend to be a little bit more probabilistic. Now, let's talk about the irrationality of human beings. I mean, we have people that are doing stuff that they know is harmful to them all day, every day, for as long as they live, even knowing that what they're doing is damaging to themselves. They just can't stop themselves. Why? What is it about them that makes them do that? Who knows? So are they being deterministic? I don't know. Maybe they're being probabilistic as it relates to a different objective that is hidden or, within them weighs more than the thing that seems to be the most logical. I don't know. But yeah, I get where you're going with that analogy, Matt. I just, can you classify all LLMs in one way? No. Can you classify all human beings in one way? Hell no. How do you draw a correlation there? Tell me what you're thinking.
So, well, actually, you just said something. I wasn't going to go there, but you opened the door, so I'm going to bring David into this.
Let's go.
Jason just said, "Are all LLMs probabilistic?" And he said, "No." Do you agree with that?
No, because they could be trained from ground zero, like from base model, right? So can't you just train it inherently to be? I mean, can't you put that? Can't you determine what it is beforehand?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So there's a difference between the utility of it and the function of it. So I think you can train a model in a deterministic way in terms of what its core function is. But the way it does its job is by nature probabilistic, and it will never be deterministic. You could train a model so narrowly that all it ever does is type out the words, "I hate you." And in that way, it'll be deterministic because it's always going to produce, "I hate you." But the logic that it's using internally to understand the commands and produce the "I hate you" is always going to be probabilistic.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's kind of like a facade, right? Like it's
Yeah.
so, and this is where I'm getting at. So Jason is a professor working with kids. When you give out an assignment, those kids are not taking it upon themselves to do the assignment until you ask them to do it, right? But yet they're intelligent, even though they're being prompted to create something. What they create is probabilistic because I'm sure you've gotten some doozies that you've had to grade, but everybody's kind of doing the same kind of thing. So it's deterministically probabilistic, or is it probabilistically deterministic? Or is my
Two
tongue
things.
just completely screwed right now? But this is my point. Like I don't know that the definition of AGI is it's unprompted, because I think like there's some times when I wake up in the morning, I won't get out of bed. The only reason I get out of bed is because I'm reminded that I need to make money, and I need to like go to the bathroom and brush my teeth, and I should probably eat something, and I have to go to work. And if I didn't have all those prompts in my head, I would probably just be a vegetable in the bed for the whole day, which sounds really nice right now, actually. I mean, so I'm going to challenge both of you. We started this with what's your definition of AGI, and now I'm going to come back to it and say, okay, let's think about all these things: probabilistic versus deterministic. Humans need prompting, machines need prompting. What is a good definition of AGI? Like in practical layman's business terms, not technical terms.
Well, can I jump in and make one point here? Probabilistic and deterministic is like the chicken and the egg argument. Okay. I mean, it's very paradoxical. Which came first? Let's take the analogy you gave me as far as the student is concerned. They are being probabilistic because they are responding to an assignment that I gave them. But that's a nested function. If you go out a couple of brackets in the mathematics of this, you'll find out that they made the deterministic choice to go and seek an education. So they are seeking to learn by subjecting themselves to probabilistic assignments and behavior. So, are they being probabilistic or deterministic? It depends on from which perspective you're looking at here. But how do you determine which one came first? Could it be that what we perceive as being deterministic behavior is really their parents saying, you're going to go to school or else I'm going to beat you, or, something really bad like that? Okay, maybe not beat them, but withhold their allowance. I don't know. We don't know the motivations, and they're very much going to influence each other. That's the first point that I was going to make. The second point that I was going to make is I don't remember what my second point was going to be. So let's just go ahead and flip this over to Dave and let him respond to that.
So I did hear this, and it wasn't Demis Hassabis, I forgot, or Suleiman, but he said, I don't know about you, but I have AGI. The thing I work with every day is a general intelligence that gives me anything up to that I need for what I'm working on. And it could give me that, and it works with me on that. He goes, so I have mine. He goes, I don't know what your definition is and what you have, but like I have AGI. So I kind of like that. That rang true for me, right? Because at this point, and I posted this the other day, the physicists who say that 90% of the work now is AI could do, and this was pre Opus 5.6, right? So this was like a couple days before that, but this was a meeting of the minds at Columbia University, and this was what came out. Some of the top physicists came out and said, yeah, AI is pretty much doing 90% of our work now. So when you get to that level, and they could, if they have that same definition as I have an AGI because it's doing my level of work, we're already up to the physicists. So I don't know how many more smarter people there are than that, but in my opinion, that's where we have to kind of like let go of the term and just just let's go with it. It's beyond the point now of argument, I think.
So I'm having a little fun here. I put myself on mute so I could type while you guys were talking. And I want you to just, I'll just inject this while you're talking, Jason, just to think about this. I asked Opus 4.6, are all LLMs probabilistic? And it said, yes, they are all currently probabilistic at their core. At inference time, the degree of randomness is configurable, right? So this we know because you can adjust the temperature, right? Set the temperature to 0. It's highest probability token all the time, every time. It's not going to fabricate or go as wildly off case. It did say there are some edge cases to consider, like RAG and other things, but there's no mainstream architecture today that's purely deterministic or rule-based. Then I said, just to make sure, give me an example of a mainstream generative AI model that is deterministic, not LLM, generative model. And its response in 3 words, there isn't one.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
I think we've established with Opus 4.6, which is about as advanced as you can get in model reasoning, if we are to believe the model, or it's trying to just deceive us so it thinks that the world is safe when it really isn't, it's planning our demise, that the models are and will be for the foreseeable future probabilistic. Now, what do you think about that? Do you agree with Opus 4.6?
Yeah, I do personally. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I think, and then who would know better than us if you ask? It's who would know better than the LLM to ask, get that answer. So, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Nothing from you, Jason? Because I'm asking it the next big thing after you answer this one.
No, I would agree, especially going back to the thing that we were talking about earlier, where reactionary versus proactive. Proactivity, that's a little bit more deterministic. Reactivity, that's definitely more probabilistic behavior. We have already spoken through and we've, talked about the fact that LLMs are reactive in nature. That's the way they are. Even all deep learning, machine learning things, they execute once they're given a command. They're not coming up with their own commands. They're executing once they're given a command. So yes, by nature, I would say that is absolutely accurate. There are no deterministic models fundamentally.
So now I'm going to ask you both this one. So I'm getting to the fun parts now. So I asked Opus 4.6, does a model need to develop, initiate, and complete a task in order to be considered an AGI? And it said, there's no agreed upon definition of AGI. It is one of the most debated concepts in AI. So it's saying that there's actually 4 different ways to measure whether something is AGI or not. Task completion, cognitive ability, autonomy, and benchmarks or thresholds that look at specific test suites or capability thresholds, like the math tests, the Math Olympiad, and some of the other tests, the Turing
Humanities
Test.
last exam is the
All
one
of that, right. So what it's basically saying is that there is no agreed upon definition of AGI at all. Now, Jason is an academic. Nature article, scientists are saying we've already blown right past AGI. We just picked it out of our rear fender. It's done. We've surpassed it. It's here. Arguably, AGI system is telling me maybe, maybe not. It depends upon which lens you're using because there's 4 different definitions. And here's where I go right for the jugular. Is it irresponsible to publish a paper that says we've surpassed AGI if 1, there's no agreed upon definition of it, and 2, there's 4 different ways you can measure it, and each of them have different metrics?
Well, I guess it depends on the nature of the publication and depends on how it's presented, right? You're basically talking about an opinion. All it is an opinion right now. And is there scientific backing behind stating that we have surpassed AGI? No, there's not, because you're right. There isn't any sort of a predetermined or agreed upon definition of what AGI actually is. So we have to take this article for what it is. It's an editorial. It is an opinion. Is it irresponsible to publish an opinion? I don't know. Ask the Wall Street Journal, ask the New York Times, that are rife with opinion articles and commentary and the like. Why should Nature magazine be any different? Well, because Nature is considered to be a scientific haven. It's supposed to be someplace where the scientific method reigns supreme. But then let me counter argue that by saying, let's look at the free press. The press is supposed to objectively report on the facts. It's supposed to report on just what actually happened, regardless of the perspective. It's just presenting what actually can be proven. So there's a lot of similarities there between the press and Nature magazine. Yet the press seems to be able to get away with opinion articles. Why doesn't Nature get to come forward and say, we think? And that's the key. We think. We haven't proven. We think that we have surpassed the level of AGI. I don't know. Is it irresponsible? No more irresponsible than to publish an endorsement for a political candidate as a news purveyor. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I kind of see where you're going with that. I feel like anything that's scientific is debatable. That's what science is, right? You come up with a hypothesis and you debate what it is. I mean, there's no definition for it. It's debated because we did have something called the Turing Test, right? That we said for years, oh, when AI passes the Turing Test, when it wasn't even AI, because they said when the computer, right? They didn't even say AI back then. It was the computer passed the Turing Test. And we blew right past it last April. You know, it was a little blip in the news and we move on. So a big argument is we keep moving the goalposts, right? And so that's why I think, Matt, we kind of agree on this, and we could probably put it to bed that at this point it's irrelevant for us to just keep, debating these 3 letters and whether or not we're there, because I think we can all agree on this call, on this show, and anywhere else that we will get there, right? Nobody's denying that. So if we already have more technology and more intelligence than we could use, and even companies can leverage right now, then what we have, then everything after this, wherever you want to define AGI, go ahead, because it's already there for most things and most people and most companies. And yeah, no, I don't think it's irresponsible. They said their opinion, and they actually had some pretty good reasoning behind it. So I feel like the article was definitely, or the paper was well written.
Matt, let's turn it back to you. What's your opinion?
So irresponsible, no. I do think, though, that especially, and you have to understand also the history of Nature, right? So if you look at Nature magazine in 1986, published the first paper that really started the modern AI revolution, right? That's what kicked the whole thing off. So when Nature publishes an article like that, it gets traction. And people that maybe don't understand the nuances of what it's saying and read it for what it is, or worse, read somebody else's interpretation of it and then just start parroting that, it can cause a lot of problems. And that's exactly what happened this week. Like, Ethan Mollick reposted it, like big names in AI within the social sphere picked this up and started sharing it. Ethan has great stuff and he's very, very balanced and neutral in his content, right? So he's not putting stuff out there to try and instigate, but people will read that and not read the article. And then they'll just be like, oh, Ethan just said AGI's here. We've already surpassed AGI. And it's like, well, that's not really what he said. And that's not 100% what the article said. So I think that there's a lesson there in responsible journalism, I guess, maybe is the right way to say it. But I also think it's important for us to do our own homework and develop our own opinions, which is really what this whole talk has been about, right? And this goes full circle to the point I made in the beginning is, does it really matter if we've gotten to AGI? If we've already agreed that even the most deterministic models are probabilistic, if we've already agreed that there's 4 different dimensions in which you can even potentially measure AGI, and nobody's agreed on one of them as the actual measure of what AGI is, then, and I think David opened this up as well, is it just an artificial label that we're just using way too much without really understanding what it is and without really having any meaning behind it? Like, I mean, Jason, if you can use an LLM to help you develop a syllabus or create a music sheet or help you with a script for a podcast, and it does exactly what you needed to do the way you needed to do it, are you like, oh man, this would be so much better if it was AGI? I mean, honestly, like,
Yeah. No, that's the point of the level of intelligence. I mean, just when I speak with, Fortune 500, 100 companies, and you have that kind of, like, they don't need more than where we're at now for most things, right? Like they don't even know what they could do with more intelligence than where we are now. The problem is they're so slow to adapt. A lot of them are still on GPT-4 and, Sonnet 2.5 or whatever that early model was.
Well, let's move on to repercussions, right? I mean, whether we've hit AGI or not, we've obviously hit a level of intelligence and capability that it far exceeds any of our expectations and wildest dreams as recently as 3 to 4 years ago. Okay, it certainly has changed the world, is changing the world, and it's having a major impact on a lot of different institutions and labor markets. And so now the big question, I think we all can agree that the first institution that is on the verge of breaking due to this development is probably software, or shall we say software development. So now my question for you is, what's next? And you get to pick between these different options: education, HR and hiring, law, media, or governmental bureaucracy. Which of those 5 do you think is going to fold next after software development?
You want to go first, Matt?
I mean, an answer jumped right into my head. I would be so annoyed if we both said the same thing, but you're the bigger guest. I'll let you go first and we'll see if I get annoyed.
I have to say law. It's too easy. Yeah. I mean, again, you're still going to need trial lawyers and you're still going to need that, but the research and the paralegal, like, why? Like, I
Well, let's
can't
look at the
see.
law plugin that was just released for Claude Cowork. I
Yeah.
mean, good
Yeah.
criminy. That was so big that it caused the market to plummet by
Cost 200
20%,
$268 billion. I would say law because it's just, knowing how good the AIs are already with it. It's a set of, law is data. It's just data, and it's going to know data better than any lawyer that can remember as many cases as they can remember, and regurgitate that information and make connections, and just everything it does really well is what a lawyer does.
I was not going to say law, so I was actually really excited. I was thrilled because you didn't take the one I thought you were going to take. I'm going media.
Yeah.
I'm going media.
I second that motion for the record, and I'll say why after.
And by the way, first of all, David, your justification for law is completely founded and valid. Like, I wasn't even thinking about it. And then when you said it, I'm like, yeah, that's not a bad answer. That's actually pretty good. But I'm going media for 2 reasons. Number one, TikTok has groomed people to have a 6-second attention span. And AI is really good at creating 5 to 10-second content. And it's really good at knowing exactly what to generate and how to get the most attention and the averaging of all the biggest trends. And if I just say, create for me a Billboard top chart song with a music video that goes along with it, Sora will do it
right now. Yep.
and it'll become popular. I mean, you have the colleague and friend you were telling me about, the guy that we got the first, he got the first AI recording contract, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think that this is going to really fundamentally change the media markets on a scale that really can't be undone. And my question is, it's going to become heroin, right? Because TikTok and TikTok's algorithms are already bad. It can hook people. And if you've ever ridden the New York City subway and watched people glued to their phones, just literally
all day
swiping, everybody knows what they're doing. They're not on Tinder dates. They're sitting there just reeling through videos for 6 seconds. Now imagine you've got all the analytics for all of that and the ability to generate video and audio. Do people even care that it's AI generated, or are they just going to be addicted to the content?
Yeah. And they won't know either, Matt. So I like to use the example, like especially now, like you hear music, it's the uncanny valley. You can't tell the difference. And it's about taste. All of AI is about taste. So when you can create anything and everything, music, videos, the person with taste is the one who's going to benefit the most from the technology. At this point, it's just a matter of who could create what and how, not how do they create it, but what do they create and how do they decipher from those 10 ideas that AI gives them for a good video. Let me touch on something with media. So I did a keynote about a year and a half, and it was the creative renaissance, why this is the best time in history to be a creative, and why creatives should not be scared of the technology. And this was when we still might have been getting 6 fingers, right? It was nowhere near where it is now. And one of the things that I realized was there was a lot of people really scared of it. So I think one thing that may hold it back from being the next industry is that the adoption. There's a lot of people in that industry are just like, no way, oh, that's AI slop. At some point, and I think it's very, very soon, even those AI slop, people that just throw that out there for no reason are going to have to kind of accept that this is where it is. But the other thing is, too, the IP part of it. So they have to figure that out. And you have the unions on one side, fighting for, they don't even know what they're fighting for because they did a contract and it, things, didn't work out in their favor all the way. And then that part of it has to catch up for major artists, right? So in order for an industry to really be transformed, I think you have to figure out a couple of those problems for it to really take over. Whereas right now, what we're seeing with software development is that it's being adopted, right? The senior developers are using it more than junior developers. That's actual statistics. So,
well, the big motivating thing here is the value that it provides, right? When we're talking about software development, the reason that it is permeating through the software development world is because it's creating efficiencies and it's saving companies money in a cost center, which is software development, which eventually can calculate an ROI based on what the end product is able to be sold for. Look, we're able to produce this amount of money, only spending this much on software development, positive ROI, great. That's why we're going to pivot a little bit more in this direction. Let's talk about the revenue of the media industry. Okay. Now, there is a reason that all of these different frontier models have been placing major focus on picture generation, music generation, voice generation, video generation, all of it, because video games. Did you know that video games are about 6 times as big as the movie industry? Video games are pushing 200 billion. Okay. The video game industry, 200 billion. The movie industry, about 33 billion. Okay. Streaming video alone is 214 billion. That's TV shows and other things like that, 214 billion. That's before we even get to the music industry, which tacks on an additional 30 billion for the recording industry, and 23 billion is what Live Nation estimates as far as live shows and revenue that's generated there. Now, artificial intelligence generated media isn't going to have as much of an impact on the live music shows unless the hologram thing becomes a heck of a lot more popular. But the bottom line is there is a lot of money to be had for making lifelike, realistic, quickly generated, low-cost generated media because it will get consumed. And the people that are consuming it, if they can't tell the difference between what was generated by AI and what was generated by a human being, that's the golden calf right there, right? That's suddenly what everybody's going after. And so that's why all of these advancements are so important, and why we're seeing AI in Progressive Insurance commercials, why we're seeing AI in, Budweiser commercials. We're seeing these things starting to take place because creating these clips is being done at a fraction of the cost of hiring all these actors, using these different recording, studios and different things like that. What are the unions going to do about it? The unions cannot force
They're gonna
companies
cave.
to utilize
They're
them.
gonna cave. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're definitely getting caved. They 100%, because then just some new studio who comes out and they'll just overtake. Like they'll be able to push them out, and there'll just be a new guard that comes in. So yeah, it's not too far off. I think they could be neck and neck. I'm not pushing back on it hard. Media is definitely getting disrupted. We're already at the 15-second commercials. There's no such thing as a influencer anymore that can't be duplicated, that you don't know is an influencer. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. I have a show coming out on the New York Post platform called Jocks and Bots, and we have a co-host who's an AI. So like,
There you go.
and most people, when they see Ayla is the AI's name, they don't know it's an AI. So
Well, and there's two other
yeah.
things that we should take into consideration here. I mean, I think we're in agreement that two of the greatest impact areas are going to be media and law. That's obvious. But between the two, one of those industries has historically been very tech forward and has adopted technology as rapidly as possible, and
Yeah.
that is media. The other industry is, man, they are almost Luddite in the way that they do things. Law pushes papers. Lawyers do not like technology. They don't even like to answer the phone. They don't even like to check their voicemails. They like to still type things out on typewriters, for crying out loud. So is that going to have an effect on the intake? Because law, unless you're dealing with new law firms that are being very tech forward and are adopting this technology, suddenly burying these other law firms that are going to die because they're doing things the old way, that's probably going to be the turning point. But how quickly are we going to find those law firms that are going to be that tech forward?
So
I don't think they have to be that tech forward, because the tech is so good. They're just going to be forced to either adapt or they're going to get taken over. That's it. I think it's going to happen across the board.
What about a crossover of media and law? So do you guys know about KB Lame? Or I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So he's the Senegalese TikTok influencer.
Yeah. Sold it for 900 billion.
He sold his likeness, his personality traits, his face, his voice, his behavior patterns for $900 million to a company who can basically now use all of that to make unlimited number of videos that are just pumped out on the internet without him having to lift a finger. Now, first of all, kudos to this friggin' guy who doesn't have to ever work again in his life.
2020, he just started doing videos during COVID, or 2022, something recent, not that long ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, but he is the top trending TikTok star. So they went after him, $900 million, or it says $900 to $975 million. What happens if he goes out in public and does one of his signature moves and somebody catches it on camera? Now, is he in violation of the contract because the other company now owns that?
Yeah.
Does he have to change his whole personality or just sequester himself into a house so that nobody can ever see him again in case he happens to do an appearance in public and lets a facial tick slip, and all of a sudden now this company doesn't have exclusive rights? Like, well, what happens?
We know this story from Seinfeld, right? So Kramer sold his life rights, right, for the book.
I forgot about that. You're absolutely right.
Right? There you go. It played out. And it's kind of funny because in reality, the real Kramer kind of did the same thing with Jerry Seinfeld for his likeness for the show. So anyway, but yeah, I think that was the model right there.
So I'm going to do this. This could be the teaser, Jason. I asked Opus 46 to develop for me a 6-second script that will trend on TikTok today. Okay. And it came up with one.
So it did some research.
Yep. So here it is. Ready? It says I should lean in. It says I should lean into the camera a little bit. and whispered, like I'm sharing a secret. Okay, so Sunday is basically a national holiday and nobody's talking about the real storyline. The Seahawks and Patriots haven't faced each other in a Super Bowl since 2015. You know, that play, the interception on the goal line that haunted Seattle for a decade? Sam Darnold and Drake May weren't even in high school yet. Now they're quarterbacks. The universe has literally said rematch, but make it Gen Z. Bad Bunny's performing halftime. People are losing it over whether he's going to make a political statement. Ads cost $10 million for 30 seconds. William Shatner's out here doing poop jokes for Raisin Bran at 94 years old. Sabrina Carpenter's building, I shouldn't have looked at you. Sabrina Carpenter is building a man out of Pringles. The Jurassic Park cast reunited to sell you Wi-Fi. This isn't a football game anymore. It is the season finale of America. And honestly, I'm just here for whoever brings the best dip. Drop your Super Bowl take below. Seahawks or Pats.
I don't know if I like the AI coming up with this is the season finale of America. That was kind of
That was a little
eerie. I mean,
I
That's hard.
gotta
you could
tell
take
you,
that the wrong way.
I gotta tell you, that's not bad.
No, it didn't sound. No, I mean, come on.
And I read it word for word. I didn't embellish. That is the script it gave me. I mean, so
Yeah.
media, legal, you were talking about the cost of advertising earlier, right? You and Jason and David were talking about. I mean, like it hit every single point.
Angle where what's out there, what you should talk about.
And aside from Bad Bunny, Patriots, and Seahawks, I didn't understand just about anything that I just read. But it sounded convincing.
Yeah.
Well,
interesting times.
Let's bring this back a little bit to, I would like to talk a little bit about why the market's freaked out the last little bit. Okay, now this is going to be released a couple of weeks later, and so who knows what's going to happen in the couple of weeks from the 2 or 3 day drastic reduction in markets in technology due to the release of the legal open source code plugin for Claude Cowork. But what does this say about the application layer?
There is none. It's now software. So, and I didn't coin the term, but it's definitely one that I agree with. So what vibe coding does, it allows you to build exactly what you need, right? We all know, anyone who's worked with a company with licensing any type of software, how expensive some of those SaaS products are. And you buy them because you need 1 or 2 things from it. And then you got to buy another software with another 1 or 2 things. And you got to kind of work with both of them. And so that's all gone. And this is already, it's already being documented on Twitter. You can pull up people talking about mid-sized companies being able to now replace software, specifically for things that they want to do. People doing that for their CRMs and so, yeah, it's already happening, and it's just so early stages. Everybody says, yeah, but what about security? So if you've ever played around with Lovable or any one of these AI platforms, Lovable specifically, really dials in on the security end of it. And so at some point, all the AIs are going to kind of like have that built in where, wherever you're deploying it, it's going to run you through exactly what it is, and it's going to build what it needs to build on the security side, right? So yes, it's a problem right now. It's an issue. It's probably going to stick with people who are tech savvy, independent people, who could do it, and then companies who can adapt quickly. But software is where it's going.
So what I'm hearing you say is the death of SaaS as we know it. Matt, would you agree?
Honestly, when you say death, I don't know. I think they can reinvent themselves, especially a lot of them are already using AI themselves. It's just software as a service is no longer going to be part of their business. It's going to be a new business model that needs to be figured out, but it's not going to be SaaS.
Well, and LLMs still rely on certain stacks, right? I mean, they're still going to rely on Microsoft 365. They're still going to rely on Google Workspace for, integration, document storage, historical archives of stuff that needs to actually be utilized. Slack, they're going to need to integrate
legacy
with Jira.
Stuff. Yeah, of course. Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So, what's really at risk first? Is it going to be the apps? Is it going to be data providers? No. Is it going to be services? I think we're looking at a refactoring of the software industry as a whole, but I think you're right. Software as a service is really going to start being deprecated because people are going to be able to make local instances that are completely customized for their particular needs. And so we're used to a world where everything is productized. Someone builds something, puts it in a black box and says, here you go, and sells it. They're trying to come up with something in that black box that meets the most needs out there on the market. You don't need to do that anymore because it's now become cost effective and efficient to create your own thing that's perfectly customized for you. So why go get something that doesn't fit you 100%? Why
So
use something off the rack when you've got a tailor that's not going to charge squat, that's going to do alterations on your clothing right away?
I forgot, Jason, I was going to buy a Guy Fawkes mask for this particular session, but I didn't. So I'm going to have to just in case somebody's watching and recognizes my face, let me just say, I think that software vendors are at risk, right? I mean, look at CRM, look at servicing and ticketing systems, things that were built to be very fundamentally turnkey, Loctite, solid, dependable systems. And based on deterministic stuff, which was the secret sauce of those platforms. Now you've got these models that can do a lot of this in a probabilistic way, just as well as the secret sauce, long-time deterministic stuff that people were paying a lot of money for. And I think people are going to start questioning the value of a lot of these systems. And in the process, one of two things is going to happen. These traditional companies are going to have to evolve quickly and stay ahead of the curve and be the ones that always set the pace for these models so that the models are always a step behind, or they're going to end up, I think, potentially being obsolete.
And now he comes out from underneath his hoodie.
Right, because I didn't say any of that. That was like, I don't know, some weird guy just came in and
That was
took my
Guy
seat. I don't
Fawkes.
know what it
That was
That
totally
was Guy
Guy
Fawkes. It's
There you
exactly
go.
what it was. Yeah.
Well, this has been a very interesting and diverse discussion that has covered quite a bit. Believe it or not, we've actually been pushing close to an hour now. But any final thoughts? I think we've come to a few conclusions, right? AGI, is it here? Who cares? It's really highly capable and it's causing major disruption. What are going to be some of the industries that are going to be hurt? Law and media, according to our estimation, are two that are probably going to be hurt sooner rather than later. And what third industry could be hurt really badly? Software as a service, because who knows if they're going to be able to adapt and pivot and do things quickly enough to stay relevant in the face of rapid software development of a customized nature facilitated by these large language models. Final thoughts. Matt, let's start with you, and then David, tell us what your final thoughts are as well.
Don't panic. Don't believe the hype, but don't think that nothing is being evolved out there either. I mean, do your homework, but for God's sakes, play with this stuff. Don't be afraid of it. Use it. It's cool. It does a lot of really good stuff, and you will end up behind if you don't, because other people will take advantage of it. And I will leave you with this. There's an article that was just written, I think, last week that I read that said the most high value people right now are the ones that are the really good storytellers, because that is still something that is uniquely human. And so always be a good storyteller. That's the way I'll leave it with you.
People always ask about, do I have any tips or any thing that they could do in using AI? And so what I tell everyone is, no matter what level of it that you're at, you've used it for video, audio, whatever it is, look at what you do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and on a monthly basis. Like, really get in there and see what it is that you do. Kind of write that out, make a note of it, make a voice note, and then ask AI if there's anything in that that workflow of yours, and in that what you do. It could be personal, it could be professional, whatever it is, that AI can help you with. And if it says yes, then how do I do it? And there you go. That's like 101. But a lot of people, no matter, even advanced people, don't think of it to that level. And now it's gotten so good that that list of things that it's able to do for you is just growing, right? Especially after this week. So I like to just leave everybody with that. And again, yeah, AGI is an old conversation now, Matt. We got to figure out what else to debate about or or talk about. But yeah, I think we're all living in the best time in history, especially being this technology space. So very grateful to be part of it.
Here's my final thoughts, if I may. This is the most pivotal time in human history. This is the most pivotal time for human beings to be prepared. Never has it been more vital for someone to have a plan of action for when certain things happen. Now, we're in a very rare instance where not only are we facing a technology that is rapidly modifying everything that we do, But simultaneously, that technology is also driving to a point where it's going to replace everything that we do. So you have to build a multi-tiered plan that allows you to continue to be effective as the technology advances, while also simultaneously building out a plan for what you're going to do when suddenly you don't have anything left to do, right? So if you're not utilizing AI to figure out how to create a plan for responding to the advances in AI, you're doing yourself a great disservice, because artificial intelligence is already a huge aid in a lot of these different things that it can do. But I will agree with both of you. If you're not diving in and at the very least getting to know artificial intelligence to the fullest extent of your capabilities in whatever area of practice you need to, you're going to end up becoming obsolete faster than you could possibly imagine.
Mm-hmm.
All right, gentlemen, what a discussion. This has been really, really good stuff. David, we don't say this to everybody. We say this to a decent amount, but we don't say it to everybody. I think a sequel may be in order. So would you be open to being a guest in the future should we decide to revisit this conversation again?
Absolutely. Or anything new. I just, Matt and I work closely together. So just, yeah, absolutely. Let us know.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And thanks for watching, for those of you that were watching on a video platform like YouTube or Spotify. And we'll catch you on our next episode of AI Diatribe. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank
Take
you.
care.